Last Night in Soho was directed by Edgar Wright and stars Thomasin McKenzie, Anya Taylor-Joy, Matt Smith, Diana Rigg in her final performance, may she rest in peace, as well as Terrence Stamp. And in this movie, you follow a girl named Eloise, played by Mackenzie, who's going to fashion college. She's going out to pursue her dreams, and when she gets there, things don't quite seem the way they're supposed to, at least not to her. Some strange stuff is happening that she cannot explain, and in a way that I'm not gonna go into because of spoilers, she can essentially find herself walking through 1960s Soho. And she's doing this through the eyes of someone named Sandy, played by Anya Taylor-Joy, who is an aspiring singer and performer. And essentially, you're seeing how some events played out at that point in time, the ripple effect that it's had on the present day, and how some strange stuff, some really bad stuff, might have impacted things going forward. The movie is marketed as a murder in the past, a mystery in the future. That's one part of the movie. That's not the entire thing. In fact, it's only, like I said, it's just like 20% of the film. The rest of the movie is a lot more. I'm not gonna go into that too much because I don't want to give away any spoilers. I think Edgar Wright is a phenomenal director. I've yet to see something from him which I did not like. I've enjoyed everything that he's made. In fact, I've loved a lot of the stuff that he's made. And some of those movies have made my top 10 lists of those years. So naturally, I was very excited to see what he would bring to the table with Last Night in Soho, especially since it's his first horror film. It's his first foray into that genre. And so that concept in itself is pretty interesting. The idea of a man who can do all of this stuff, has done this stuff before, tackling this genre is pretty interesting to think about. And Last Night in Soho is anything but not interesting. This is a fascinating film. I enjoyed a lot of this film, and I think it's easily his most unique to date. He does an incredible job of putting you into the atmosphere and the world of this movie. In every Edgar Wright film, some things you have to always keep in check, some things that you know always work. One of those things is sound design, the other thing is cinematography. The way he's able to create a certain ambience in that theater is really remarkable, and once again, whenever we see Eloise in that 60s setting and we're seeing her witness certain things, it really feels like we're entering that world along with her. And the film does a really good job with that, especially, like I said, when it comes to the visuals and sound design. The two things that he does really, really well, once again, excel in this movie. Visually, it is spectacular. It is a gorgeously shot film with some amazing use of color. Very key in this movie, the lighting choices in particular, lots of reds and blues, but there's some really great ways of how that's handled, and the sound design is impeccable. I saw this movie in a Dolby cinema, and there's one really cool thing they did about 20 minutes in. So for a long time, the audio was from the front channel. So as you know, like the Dolby's speakers, they're surrounding you, right? Because yeah, and they were only focusing on the front channel for about 20 minutes of the movie. Then there's a scene where you sort of like find yourself going into this space, and the audio, one speaker at a time, just sort of fills up the entire room. And eventually that shot, as it comes into full perspective, you can hear it all around. And I thought the way that was handled was really cool. All the performances are great. Thomasin McKenzie is one of the best actresses working today, and she once again proves that. She's really good in the film, as is Anya Taylor-Joy. They're both fantastic. Matt Smith plays a sleazy asshole of a character, and he portrays him to, well, sleazy asshole perfection. So you get that. Diana Rigg, may she rest in peace once again, a phenomenal actress. She's really good in the movie as well. There's a couple of scenes with her that are really, really great, and I love them. Those scenes were really special. Terrence Stamp once again kills it. I love seeing Terrence Stamp in anything. I think he's one of those actors, like every time you see him pop up in something, you're like, my man. And once again, when he popped up here, that was really great. As is the case with Edgar Wright movies, you also get a really great musical sense to them. The soundtrack in this film is phenomenal. The song choices that are representing the mood and tone of this film are all remarkable. Some really great picks, and I can't wait to get that soundtrack. There's also a really great score by Stephen Price, which was really cool, especially when it goes into those more horror-like elements, which the film does quite often. You will find a lot of inspirations in here. One of the things that Edgar Wright has cited as a major inspiration was a film called Don't Look Now, which came out in 1973. Really good movie, Donald Sutherland filmed, and a film that is considered one of those landmarks in horror after it has gotten a lot of reevaluation over the years. It almost comes off as one of those films that is now a staple of the genre. Definitely check that out. You can definitely tell, in fact, that there are lots of little things that are taken from that movie that add to the visual flair of it and the directorial flair, and I was very impressed by all of those things. Where I feel like the film could be an issue for some people though is in terms of the storytelling and the narrative, because it's a film that does things that I feel like not everybody's going to be on board with, especially in the way the structuring of the story is. Like, you don't necessarily get a lot of answers for certain things at times, and there's a lot of emphasis on style over substance. My opinion on style over substance is one that I have for a lot of movies in general, which try to do something which is going away from the conventional, storytelling structure. The thought is this: if you can make it work, I'm on board with it. And if you can make it happen in a way that doesn't eventually take away from the rest of the film, then that's fine by me. It's a film that tries its best to maintain as much of a coherent and as much of a cohesive course as possible. But there are times where I feel like the film does sort of become more style over substance, and sometimes to a fault. There are a couple of things in particular, especially regarding commentary and thematic elements that film tries to hone in on, that I feel like get sort of lost in the mix. It goes for a much deeper understanding of certain things and ends up a little more surface level than it's supposed to, which I thought was a bit disappointing. Like, I think if I had to point out a flaw in the film, that would be the flaw. I think that there are things which could have used a little bit more expansion, a little more well thought, and sometimes it could feel a little empty as a result of that. But did it affect a majority of the film for me? Personally, no. It didn't take away from eventually the stuff that unfolds, having an impact. It still did. I just think it could have had a little better impact in certain things. But I can understand some people watching this movie and saying it had none, and some people even hating the way the film is structured. Eventually, as the film builds towards the conclusion, there are choices made that I feel like are going to be divisive, and they have been. This review is a couple of weeks late, in fact, and I apologize for that, by the way. But I completely understand why some people watching this movie might say, no, this is not working. This does not work. But I can also see people saying, this works. This works really well. And so the conversation around this movie that is going to eventually like build into, I think, is going to be an interesting one. I find myself saying that about a lot of movies nowadays, and I think that's cool. I like the fact that we're going away from, just the conventional sense of storytelling, and we're creating more challenging films. Whether or not they work the entire way for some people is one thing, but the fact that they're happening, I think, is really, really cool. So will I recommend Last Night in Soho? I absolutely will. Once again, I think Edgar Wright does a really good job. I think that the world that he and Christy Wilson-Cairns have created in this script is really fascinating. I think it could have been developed in a few points a little bit more, but overall, I walked out of the movie very satisfied, and I can't wait to see it again. I feel like on multiple viewings, this is going to be an even more fascinating experience. I'm going to give Last Night in Soho an 8.5 out of 10. Guys, thank you very much for watching. Look forward to more reviews very soon. As always, if you like this, please do subscribe, and I'll see you guys at the movies.